Before we get into the live mailbag, plenty of super thanks to get to from this past week. All these came in before the Cowboys game, by the way. Matt Cox says, do you think Earl Thomas is in Stephen Jones' price range yet? Where we used to drink for Earl Thomas stuff there. He is now Hall of Fame eligible. He actually might get in because he at one point was the best safety in the NFL. Also funny to see him tell Rosina Anderson, I can still play. No, you can't, dude. Come on. Sean Fripp just says, thanks. Oh, thank you very much, Sean. As a reminder, any super thanks, as long as you don't commit an ism, you know what those should be by now, even if it's F you, Tom, will get featured on the show because we appreciate your support. Edit your message, send in whatever. We'll give you some love here on the Cowboys Report. Richard Robinson. Dak is in year 9, still young for a QB. He just got paid, but when do you think about a quarterback in waiting like Green Bay did with Rodgers and Love, 2026, or is it supposed to be Lance? It's a very good question, actually. You're right, because remember, Dak is still young for a quarterback. That sounds weird because in running back years, he's cooked. And in quarterback years, I mean, shoot, Romo's best year was his age 34 season. He got all of Dak's contract basically to get to that point. You would, in general, you should kind of always be on the lookout for the next quarterback. I think that's a smart organizational team-building philosophy. You also want to try to time it up with contracts. You don't want to have what you're facing right now, or at least what you were facing, where Dak and Lance are both on expiring contracts. I kind of feel like the Lance race has been run. You could bring him back if you want. Don't know how likely that actually ends up being. The other part you have to consider with like Rodgers and Love is what your overall big picture goals is and how you want to spend your assets. Because it helped out Green Bay in the long run. They have Jordan Love. They didn't have any delays. They had to bottom out. They got that right. But, boy, they really could have used another wide receiver instead of Jordan Love in those final years of the Rodgers window. Couldn't they have? They were close, but not quite there, and they had one of their most valuable assets sitting on the bench because he was a backup quarterback. So you have to balance all of those things together. If there is a quarterback you're convinced is the next guy, sure, take him. I don't think the 2025 class is very good for that, so we can revisit in 2026. Those are thanks from Michael. I can see it now. Cowboys offseason overpay Rico Dowdle #1 back money because we like our guys. Not a shot at Dowdle. We just say running back and Jerry would rather overpay guys already on the roster. I get where you're coming from. Don't get me wrong at all there, Michael. I also don't think you have to overpay Rico Dowdle. Nobody wanted him this past offseason. He wasn't even guaranteed a roster spot based on his contract. Chuma Adoga got more guaranteed money than Rico Dowdle did. So I actually do think they will bring him back, and I'm fine doing that if you get some more explosive playability in the backfield as well. To either be 1A, 1B, whatever, #1 back, make Dowdle RB2. That's fine. But I don't think you have to worry that much about some like massive overpay, $7 million a year, give him the Derrick Henry contract. I think you can get him for max like $310. Like the Antonio Gibson contract was like $311 and like 4 or 5 guaranteed. I think you can make that happen. So do you want to re-sign Rico Dowdle? Pin comment on today's show. Y for yes, N for no. Kivo, Jerry Jones has become very incompetent like Joe Biden. Hopefully Stephen Jones sells the team or does what needs to be done. That's the issue. I have no faith in Stephen Jones. I don't think that's going to go very well. If I did politics, there's a very obvious analogy that I won't do because I hate politic talk. But I don't think that's a very likely outcome, unfortunately. Sometimes the next devil isn't always a better one. Steven, I can see the Cowboys going 8-8, backdoor in the playoffs, win one game, and Mike keeps his job. I think it means 9-8 because remember 17 games. Look, I'll be honest. I just don't want to engage with that as a possibility. That's not fun for me. Because, that's not going to work. It didn't work when you were healthier. I guess you really weren't much healthier either. You were healthy on one side of the ball a little bit. Let's just be chill guys. Let's be chill guys, and we'll check in again after week 15. How about that? Because I think that this is very much some false hope. It might have been different if you were healthier earlier and you would have been able to win those winnable games against the Falcons and the Eagles and the Texans, but you've been too banged up, and I think it'll end up being too much overall for this team to overcome. Today's Cowboys Report is brought to you by Ollie. Clean, fresh nutrition for your dog in 5 flavors they'll absolutely love. You don't have to be a vet to know that feeding your dog real, whole foods with minimal processing is one of the best choices you can make for their health. Here's how it works. You fill out Ollie's 30-second quiz, and they'll create a customized meal plan. Ollie crunches the numbers, recommends the right recipes and daily portions for your pup. And for any first-timers, they'll send you your pup's first box with 2 weeks' worth of meals, and I got to gradually switch them over to their new diet. You can customize your meal plan as well. This is my dog, Finn. Sometimes he likes his Ollie dog food a little bit too much, and as soon as 6 o'clock hits, he is whining and crying for his food. The time change didn't help too much on that front, but he loves it. Who can say no to that face? Who can say no? Ollie's biggest sale of the year is here. For a limited time, you can get 70% off your first box, plus a free bowl and storage container. Simply head to ollie.com, fill in your dog's details, and use code CHATSPORTS to get the lowest price of the year on a personalized meal plan. The deal ends on December 6th, so don't delay. Head to ollie.com, enter code CHATSPORTS to get 70% off your first box. Link and code will be in the comments section and the description of today's show. $20 for Dwayne Jackson. As far as Mike is concerned, if he wants to still coach, do you think he should join a college staff to evolve? Bill O'Brien, Shannon, other coaches did it. Maybe come back in a couple of years if he chooses to do so. It's a clever thought, Dwayne. One I hadn't really considered too much there. Here's my big issue with the Mike McCarthy side. Like, Bill O'Brien had done college stuff before. So he kind of had that background. I don't think at 61 years old, Mike McCarthy wants to go recruit and do NIL when he hasn't coached in the collegiate level since 1992. Been 30-plus years since he was at the collegiate level. I don't think he wants to go do those things. I think your philosophy is spot on. Go evolve. Be better. I don't know if at this point in his career Mike wants to go do that. Maybe he can latch on as an assistant or the senior assistant role somewhere with an old buddy. I'm not sure that ends up being. His tree has not gone that great. And he can pick up some new things there. Corey, if the Giants beat us, is the tank back on? Cowboys are a letdown team, by the way. And that line is only 3.5, which confuses both Marshall Green and I. He said bet it up to 7.5, by the way. He doesn't think it's going to go very well, which I find interesting. Feels like a weird line. I want you guys to predict the score of Cowboys versus Giants. Let me know in the comments section of today's show what you think that final score prediction will be. Brandon J., what will our draft stock look like if we win this game? Hate they're starting to win meaningless games when we have little to no chance at the postseason. I get where you're coming from. Depending on what else happens around you, you might fall to, maybe you fall down to like, and the Bears are still going to be behind you, even if they, if they lose. Maybe you fall to like 14-ish, but then you've got other games you'll probably lose. Like, if you win 6 games this year, you'll probably be around the top 10. You win 5 games this year, you'll be inside the top 10, pushing that top 5 spot. You win 4, you lose out, I think you'll be in the top 5 most likely. There's just so many moving pieces that it's a little tough to fully identify at this stage. There's still so many games left. Eugene Roberts, this was the craziest game that I have ever seen live. That game was like, the kickers are bad, and it's 13-9. This is kind of ugly. And then the last 5 minutes went off the rails. And that was like from a boring, ugly football game to this is chaos. It was like a basketball game where people only tune in for the final 2 minutes, and it's pure, unadulterated chaos like that. Remember that Xavier, Kansas State, Gus Johnson game years ago in March Madness? That was this game somehow, although people didn't pay attention in the first half. Fred, can we please use Turpin more on offense? Here's the thing with KaVontae Turpin. I think he is still a gadget guy. Now, the gadget can be useful. You saw the Rams use Tavon Austin in an impressive way. I think if you ask him to do a bunch of comebacks and hitches, that's just, in vertical fades and double coverage, that's just not going to work very well. But, why haven't you run mesh one time with KaVontae Turpin? Why don't you use him on a crosser? And, run it with Lamb and Turpin? Right? Doesn't that make sense? Get your fast guy going with Lamb, see which one gets open. Because they'll probably go with Lamb. They'll probably shade coverage his way. And then Turpin's open, and now the ball's in space in his hands. Can you try the occasional less telegraphed jet sweep play to him? Can you do him on slants? The answer is, I don't think your head coach is good enough. I don't think he's creative enough to make that happen. So on your head coach, what is your confidence level in Mike McCarthy? Scale it for me from 1 to 10 in the comment section of today's show. From the Great Duke Bothers, you see the Trevon Diggs IQ test results from a week ago. Explains his recent play. I don't know what we're talking about, frankly. I'll Google it afterwards, but I don't really know what those test results were. I also, frankly, don't care that much because there is a difference between football IQ and whatever regular IQ is, and I don't he's made plays this year. I don't really care, frankly. Food review. Cowboys dropped pick 16-ish in the weirdest part of the draft where you're out of the first round grades. Trade the pick and for who? It's a good thought. It's a good thought there. I don't know. And go back to the Diggs thing too, but in a second here. I don't know. You still might be in Genty range, by the way. That's not out of the range of possibilities. I honestly, I think my answer would be I would trade down and just get extra picks in general. Because you're right. That's a very tricky part of the status draft. I just Googled this. Fake news. Fake news. I've Googled it. The guy who tweeted it is a fake account. Ryan Evans, ESPN, isn't a real person. Okay? Or I'm sure there's a Ryan Evans, but he does not work for ESPN. And in fact, it as unlikely as Twitter does this stuff, they even limited the views and said this is hateful conduct, which Twitter never does because it's Twitter these days. So didn't happen. Everyone got. All right. If you haven't already, hit that sub button to be a part of future Dallas Cowboys mailbags, youtube.com/CowboysTV. Free Cowboys videos each and every single day, even on Thanksgiving, which we'll be live for. Tyler, Guyton at left guards with left tackle. Look, several things here. He's not a guard. He's never played guard. So I can listen to the Guyton at right tackle conversation there, but he really hasn't been gotten beat around the edges. His issues is when he lunges and kind of almost panics, and he's done this fewer times, by the way. That's why he's allowed fewer sacks, and he kind of drops his head into contact. That's very fixable, especially working with Duke Manyweather. I want to put him a right tackle. We can have that conversation, but I actually think tackle to guard transition is oftentimes harder than left tackle to right tackle. Well, at least it can be. It depends on the player. Roy Williams, which one again? Now the defense is playing. Better you think Jerry would make Mike Zimmer the head coach? Be a typical Jerry Jones move. Worries me. I also think that, maybe we shouldn't overlook the fact that the Cowboys defense allowed 2 late game scores that still almost blew that game for you because they were bringing 3, which you should, and then brought 2 at one point, delayed blitzes as well. I actually did that pretty well. The Hail Mary play, they did a good job. The 86-yard score, they brought 3, bad idea. I don't want Mike Zimmer as my head coach. Depending on who my head coach is, he can be a DC candidate, but I don't want to mandate anything with him. From Dwayne, which college coach is most likely to get hired this cycle? I don't know if there is one. Deion will draw some interest because it's Deion. Maybe not from this team. he also doesn't want to leave. Dan Lanning will draw interest. I don't think he wants to leave. Lincoln Riley might try to jump at some point, but he's not doing a good job at USC. That should raise some red flags there. It's not as... That hasn't worked that great in the past. Ignore your own team's history here, by the way, just in general. Might not happen this year.